we met actually online in a Facebook group. And we just kind of resonated because it was a real estate business building Facebook group. We all kind of resonated with one another. Then we met in person that year at a real estate conference, and we just clicked, and we just started chatting, and like there was so much going on in our life, and we just started dumping information and questions and chatter into this Facebook chat. And it has been nonstop ever since. So we have a couple of rules for today. Actually, we kind of have one rule, and that is we are full-blown transparent. So, you know, sometimes there are things, the right thing to say, but not necessarily the
reality,
the reality, when you're in an interview or when you're on stage. So those are not, you guys are getting just the raw, like we're being super real. I think that there's, I think that we're all kind of hungry for that, right? So this isn't about being Instagram perfect. This isn't about being stage perfect. This is just about being real. So without further ado, I would like for each one of you to introduce yourself. Let's go ahead and, we also have tribe names. So I know it's weird, but I cannot get through this webinar calling you guys by your real name, because we just don't refer to each other by our real name. So
that just sounds weird.
It sounds so weird. And so Christy Belt Grossman.
You call me by my name. I don't. You guys don't.
We call you by V. We call you V. Yeah. So Christy Belt Grossman is Hip Kitty, and Adelina Ronar, which is such a formal sounding name, is Trixie. She's Trixie. And so and then Via is V9. So okay, Hip Kitty, go for it. Tell us a little bit about you.
Awesome. I'm Christy Belt Grossman. I'm the owner of Ops Boss Coaching. Today, when we met, I was the COO of a real estate team who was one of the first real estate teams to do $1 billion in sales. I am married to my college sweetheart. It will be 38 years this year. We have a 30-year-old and 37-year-old daughter. I am, speaking of Women's History Month, the oldest amiga from that generation. So I actually have been the breadwinner in my family since 1992. Trixie, what year were you born?
86.
Yeah, so I've been the breadwinner since Trixie was 4. And my life has totally changed because of this tribe. I'm married to Bill. Bill was a stay-at-home dad, and now he is the pastoral associate at a church and a baseball coach with his MBA. But he's the primary at home. V9, take it away.
Hey everybody, yep, my name's Via Williams, and I don't really go by V9 a lot on chat, but for all of you guys who remember the AVA, all I will say about V9 is it's a method that I have developed over the years to get my way. That's enough. We'll have to talk about that one later.
Except in Instagram.
Yeah, except for in spam. I never get my way there. So I have 3 kids. Michael, 20, who lives right by Trixie. In fact, Trixie was our realtor when we bought our house that he's living in Austin, Texas. And then I have a 17-year-old junior, Aiden, and I have an 11-year-old daughter, Zoe, who is 5th grader. And we all live in Kirkland, which is a suburb of Seattle. My husband, Ben, and I have been married for about 24 years. Ben does property management and I would say manages the household. He's the household manager. And I think I'm the only hired gun in the group, guys. I think I'm the only true W-2 employee here, right? Yeah. I am the director of growth for Ben Kinney Companies, which means I lead 8 Keller Williams brokerages and help lead our mortgage title escrow. I have the VIA group. I'm a co-host on a national podcast called Empire Building. And I have another business called Amplify, which some of you guys here have been to our first event, and our second event's coming up in September. So I have a lot going on.
A lot going on.
A lot going on. I don't have quite as much, but a little bit. I'm Adelina. I'm in Austin, Texas. Everybody's moving here. You guys should move here. Join the club. When we first met, I actually lived in a really small town, Knoxville, Tennessee. there was a lot of things that, I mean, I had never heard of Botox at that point. I had probably never had any alcohol in my life during that time. So a lot has changed since then. I now am.
We've corrupted her. We've corrupted her.
Just
Yeah.
slightly.
She now knows all about Botox and alcohol, FYI.
I own a real estate office here in Austin. We do over $100 million in sales volume a year. I'm engaged daily. I'm in my office here. Nothing fancy. We just do a lot of good work for the community. I also am the Texas region partner for the Bankini companies, and I'm mainly engaged in finding more talent partnerships. I am happily married, almost 15 years. My husband's name is John. He's a general contractor. We've always had the flexibility of being both business owners and also the burden of being both business owners. We have 2 kids. I have a 13-year-old getting ready to start high school in the fall. And then I have a 10-year-old. And that's kind of our life.
Awesome. And I have been married to Sean for going on 23 years. He is a business owner. He owns an audio video company, does home theater, sound systems, ultra high-end stuff. And he's always been his own business owner. Our worlds do not intersect. He works in he works in Hollywood, Malibu, LA area. I'm more inland. So our worlds do not really intersect in terms of professional. We've got 2 kids, 19 and 17, so a college freshman and a high school junior, both boys. And so I own a boutique real estate business brokered by Keller Williams, Starks Realty Group, and I specialize in handling real estate matters in family law cases. So it's a very unique niched business. And then I also opened up the Alumni Institute, which is a training organization that teaches and trains the real estate industry on how to serve that niche. So that is a little bit about our backgrounds. So ladies, probably the question, so we're going to get into the meat now. The question that I think we all get, in fact, as we were prepping for this call, you asked, what's the question you all get? And we all kind of simultaneously said, how do you do it all? That's the question. I think that that working moms, business owning moms, whatever, get. So if you were to give a 1-sentence response to that, what would it be?
That we don't do it all.
Yeah, I have 2 kind of thoughts on it. It's what gives you joy and what's your highest dollar per hour. Do those things and find a way to leverage the rest.
And I'd say I don't do it all. We do it all. We do what we choose to do.
Yeah. So there's a trend. In fact, I was talking with, I haven't been given permission to disclose who she is, so I'm not going to do it, but she is an amazing millennial in my life. She's on the call. She knows who she is. And she was telling me there's this trend in millennial mom life where you're supposed to do all these things like grow a garden, make food, okay, like
You already lost me.
Yeah.
wait, hold on.
I'm like, that's worse than cooking.
Wrong webinar.
Grow the food too.
Okay, like make this organic watermelon cucumber popsicles.
Oh, you really lost me.
Make all this stuff. Make your own baby food, right? Make your own baby food.
We don't do that.
We don't even make adult food. Why would we make baby food?
Right.
I don't know.
So it's interesting that this trend has gotten so like it's gone this pendulum of women and Hip Kitty, you and I were talking because you are a baby boomer and your mom was a trendsetter. You're the daughter of a real trendsetter, Gail Belt, who, for those of you who don't know, she's an industry legend, and it's interesting because it's like the pendulum has really swung from this whole, women's liberation movement to where women are equal. And then now all of a sudden we've got women who are, it's almost like the Pilgrims making food, their own stuff.
I think the women's lib movement got a message out that was not the message they meant to send, but the message, being a child of growing up in the 70s, that came out was, you can have it all and you have to do it all. And so my generation felt like we had to have perfect families, perfect careers, succeed everywhere. And that's kind of almost like this backlash that's lasted into what your friend was talking about, where you have to be this perfect mom. Like, we don't have to be that. That's not what women's lib was about, but that's the message that came out. Like, you can do it all, but you have to be the one that stays home when the kids get sick, and you have to be the room mom, and you have to do all the things, but you really don't.
So are any of you, oh, go ahead.
Can I just jump in there, Laurel? Because I think what's interesting about this is we've been talking about this a lot on our podcast, Christy and Laurel, and I think it's an interesting topic for women and moms, mom guilt, right? The whole mom guilt thing. Mm-hmm. Because I remember reading an article about Nancy Reagan in like the early 90s. I don't remember, it was so long ago. And she said, here's the thing, you guys. She's like, all I know is my kids want to see me home when they come home from school. I don't have to go play with them or interact with them. I'm just going to be there and they're going to know I'm there. And I don't know why that article stuck with me, and it just got me off the hook. And I tell a story about this, and that is that oftentimes when I'm on like the 17th viewing of an Avengers movie during family movie night, I will pull my computer out because, God bless it, I like the Avengers. I don't need to see, Iron Man 17 times. So I'll pull my computer out and I'll just kind of do passive work, right? I'm with the family, I've got a blanket over me, puppies are cuddling, the kids are all around. And I kind of started feeling guilty about it. And so before last summer, Aiden, my now 17-year-old, he goes, "Hey mom, can we have like a coaching session? Can I meet with you?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course, honey. That'd be great." And he goes, I want what you've got. And I go, "Well, what's that?" And he goes, "I see how much you love your work, and you love it so much that sometimes when we're watching movies, I see you pull your computer up and work, and I want that. I want to like love something so much that I would rather do that than watching Iron Man." And it was like, what? Like, I don't have to be guilty about this. Like, could this be that I'm being a role model to my kid and actually not screwing him up for life? Could this be that I'm actually showing him something positive? And I think that we put all this pressure on ourselves. And I actually think our mom, I'd be curious to talk to our mom's generation, but our generation, you have to be in there playing with them. You have to be interacting. You have to be on your hands and knees. And I just never subscribed to that. I'm not going to do that. I'm a great mom. I'm present when I'm with my kids. I'm not going to do that. And so I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, that being with your kids, the definition of that has changed. I think there's a lot more pressure to be engaged and in the sandbox with them. And I'm not sure that's good for them.
That's good.
There was an article on boredom, right? Like, and kids, like, like, especially I'm a millennial, right? And so like, everybody around me subscribes to the same thing, like being so hyper focused on the kids and hyper focused on everything, and kids not knowing how to entertain themselves, right? And my son Lucas, he always says, "I'm bored," I'm like, gosh, what a great opportunity to find some way to entertain yourself, Lucas. And and he's developed ways to entertain himself, right? Like, so there's like a negative to all of this, like hyper focus as a mom, that has negative effects. The other side of it is like not being present, and also finding the happy medium is, I think, what we've focused on. At least I have.
And there's a path to finding the happy medium. I don't think all four of us, I think, had some struggles and challenges. Like my path to happy medium included my husband bringing my girls in at 9:00 at night to sit in the conference room at our mortgage company to have ice cream so that I could see them that day before they went to bed. Like, that was a big fail on my part, but it was my path to figuring out where we are now.
So what about how do you pick and choose? I mean, what you are going to do? What are some non-negotiable boundaries or things that you've set up that you do show up for? I mean, because I also know our kids are the most important thing, hands down. So what are some things that, you know, some structures that you all have set up that make it work?
Dinner for us. No phones at dinner. Dinner's our sacred time. I'm not saying we do have dinner together 7 days a week anymore, but I have to say, I would say a good 3 to 5 days a week, we have family dinner still, which is hard to do with kids in cross country and soccer and, you know, me and just the whole, you know, there's a lot going on, right? And that's the deal. No phones at dinner. You know, sometimes we, you know, we cheat, right? And we call someone out on that. But I mean, for the most part, we do that. And we always go through gratefuls for the day, you know, wins and losses for the day. And that's my sacred time.
Dinner.
I love that. Now, let me tell you the SBAM version, since we're real and raw, is I've had dinner with Via and her family and her kids and done gratitudes with them. But what happens was Ben was home cooking, getting all the dinner together. We arrived at the house and hung out with Ben and the kids. And then Via came in right in time for dinner. And then we had an awesome family time. And that was great, right?
But that's the rhythm. That's kind of what
Yeah.
it feels like. Yeah. Yeah.
Trix, what about you?
Yeah, we're big into dinner. It's 5. My kids are younger than Via's right now, so for us, it's definitely 5+ days a week. It's a time for all of us to have that like kind of hard stop. But I have a live-in nanny, so the live-in nanny is the one who prepares the dinner. I have a teenager, so I'm always looking for ways to be more present with her. So we do a walk 3 to 4 days a week. And then we do TV time, and it's weird. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. Like I'm just like Netflixing all day long because I don't have time for that. But it's a way to get my kids downstairs and sit there. And half the time we're talking, the other half, you know, we're watching something. But I would say we Netflix together probably about 3-4 days a week as well. And it's like, it's the quality time aspect. It's not the TV thing. It could be doing anything else.
Hip Kitty, what were yours? I mean,
I was just going to add, I have older kids, right? During our SBAM relationship, one of the things that I really appreciated is my youngest, who's now 30, she comes to all the trainings. Like she's taken Quantum Leap. She was a speaker at our Ops Boss Leader Retreat last year. I think her life has been enriched by our relationship and our personal growth as part of SBAM. So those of you who have kids, teenagers and whatever, invite them to go on that journey with you.
You know, I think we all have excelled in that. Laurel, you've got, you know, Andrew's now working with you, right? Trixie, you've always brought your kids to the office. I mean, Hip Kitty, we all went to your daughter's wedding. We feel part of your family. And, you know, I'm definitely, I pick and choose. My oldest son is not interested, but, you know, definitely Aiden and I know Zoe are super involved in my business. I brought Aiden to Inman with me in New York. I love one-on-one trips with my kids. That is mandatory. Having a one-on, if you guys have multiple kids, I can't stress enough how awesome it is to have one parent, one kid, little mini weekends away on a plane if you can. My dad did that with all of us. He divided us all growing up. I mean, I went to Paris with my dad. I will never forget that. Like the first man I went to Paris was my dad, you know? And so I think these are really special memories. So don't forget to incorporate your kids in all of this, you know? And I think it's also good to correlate like, hey guys, when mom's out working, this is a choice. I love it. And I'm providing, you know, private school and these trips. And I mean, you know, you have to correlate what the time away means and try to bring them in, I think.
For those of you who do not do dinner, I will shout out to you guys because we didn't. We couldn't. Sean's commute, he would have to leave work at 2:30 or 3 to be home in time for dinner. It wasn't ever going to be able to happen. So we did not do family dinners. Hilda was our live-in nanny. She lived with us from the time Andrew was born until he was about 14. And so she would cook and she did all of that. And then I would come home. We were not that family. And it's kind of a regret. I feel I have a complex about it. You guys know, we've already talked about, I have a complex around it. So I decided after being at Via's one time and sitting down with her family and like that super like healthy situation going on over there, I mandated that we are going to start doing that. Damn it. And so Sean, like, it was so stressful. I'm like, dude, you have to be home. You have to be home. Have you left yet? And he's like, I'm trying. Like, we're
It like ruined your family to have the sitcom family
about
dinner.
him, coming home. I'm like, everything's cold. This sucks. And then he finally comes home, and then we're sitting there, and so I make the kids go around. I'm like, we're gonna do peaks and pits or whatever it is you call it. And we're like, so what was your peak of the day? And my kids, I mean, who are now, like, they were at the time, they were like 14 and 16, and they're just like looking at me. They're picking up their green beans and eating them with their fingers. They're like, we're not doing it. We ain't doing it. I didn't have a peak of the day.
It like wrecked
It
you.
was horrible. I was so much steam is coming out of my ears. So every time I tried to make this dinner thing work, it just backfired. So finally I just said, forget it. We're done. We're not doing family dinners. We're going to have to do something else. So, so anyway, if there's anybody out
Laurel,
there,
you drove him to school every morning. That was your, that's your one thing. Yeah.
My one thing was taking them to school in the morning. I didn't have phones, didn't do any, like, that was our thing. I drove them to school, and we started our day, and, and then I picked them up from school, and there was that. So anyway, those were some of our sacred times. And then travel. I mean, we all travel, and then everything in between, everything in between. So, awesome. Okay. So, so in terms of leverage, we kind of alluded a little bit to who does what in your household. So back to the question about, do you do it? How do you do it all? What kind of leverage did you have? Because the answer unanimously is we don't do it all. So what is the leverage system that you all have at home?
I can start really quick so we can fly through this so everybody understands. So I have a live-in nanny. I've had her for the last 3 years. She cooks and cleans, drives the kids around to school, does play dates, stuff like that. But I couldn't always afford that. That wasn't like something that was in my budget forever. When they were younger, someone always took care of them, but it wasn't always somebody that was live-in and like helped me with everything. This kid's schedule, I would say, is a partnership between all 3 of us. So I see it all as a partnership. Live-in nanny, husband, and myself, like, this is a partnership. And when we talk about like vacations and like who does the scheduling and stuff, like, I would say that I'm the mastermind behind it. Like, I have a lot of ideas and I want them all done. And then Dora and John like take it, and we run our life by Google Calendar. As far as like finances, that's a big question that we get a lot, is who does the finances? I like control. So I do like doing taxes, and I like doing the investment portion. My husband does all of like the bill paying. I can't handle like the day to day. So that's what my life looks like from like the top down.
I'm pretty boring because Bill does basically everything you asked on the list. He cooks, he cleans, he works full-time and coaches, so he has 2 jobs, but he will tell you himself his primary job is me and the kids. And our kids are grown, but that's where he gets, we chatted the other night online, that's where he gets his fulfillment. So he does everything. He has his MBA, so he's actually the CFO of my company, as well as handling all the home finances. I get to do all the fun stuff, like plan the vacations. We're very much a partnership in terms of setting our goals, deciding what's important, and then doing that. And then he's kind of the executor. I'm more the visionary.
Yeah, the only thing I love that, and Bill's just an amazing person. We've had an au pair. So when the kids were young, we did have a live-in au pair. I'm a huge advocate of the au pair program. And if anybody watching or listening to this has thought about that and they're struggling with having someone live with you, we have one for like a decade. And I'm happy to walk you through that. It's not like you think. It's not invasive. I think it's pretty amazing. The only thing I wanted to add too is, Trixie, you said something interesting, which has been an involvement of our marriage. And we view it as a partnership too. There's never really been egos attached to these roles. We just kind of go, oh, let's maximize you in this season of our life. Ben and I have always like toggled between who's the primary breadwinner. And this is my season, to be one, but we've never really had an ego behind that. No one really cares. It's like, okay, who's making the money over the next 5 years? Oh, it's going to be you. Okay, great. In my 30s, I definitely was more of a, I was a realtor, but I kind of was more focused. I was definitely a probably not a full-time realtor, right? I was like in kid zone then. And then when I turned about 40, I went full on workaholic.
So
Yeah.
how do you overcome the issue about letting someone else raise your kids? I don't want to, I'm going to stay home, or I'm going to work part-time, or whatever it is, because I don't want someone else to raise my kids.
Well, I have mom guilt. You guys don't have mom guilt, I don't think. I think we talked about this, right? Did we talk about this? And you guys don't have it? I have mom guilt big time.
Oh, mom guilt.
Yeah. I don't know, Laurel. I didn't, Ben and I don't know how to answer that.
I think we need to get our kids on here on the next
Yeah.
time.
So
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I hear like the question on mom guilt and all of that, and I did struggle for it, especially with it. And it was probably about 7 years ago, and it was in a class, and this gal from Atlanta, like I was telling her that I had this mom guilt, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Are you a good mom?" I'm like, "Well, I'm a good person," and she's like, "Well, I had a horrible mom." Like, do you understand? You're a great mom. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, put your hands out. Like, look at your kids 20 years from now. What do you want them to become? What characteristics do you want them to have? And I was telling her, I was like, I want them to be kind. I want them to be, good humans. I want to put people first. I want them to be ambitious. I want them, all these things. And she's like, great. Did any of that mean you had to bring in cupcakes to the homeroom? Did any of that mean that you had to do the laundry? No, like everything you just said, what if everything you want your kids to be is exactly what you're doing now, right? And so, for whatever reason, that shifted my mindset. It gave me permission to be who I am. God gave me these kids for a reason, and I own that. And so I don't have mom guilt since that, but I did struggle with it because I didn't own what I was bringing to my kids. So
I love what you just said. I want to plus that, Trixie, because you just said God didn't give me those kids. God gave me those kids for a reason. He also gave you all your brains and your business smarts and your competitive genes and all those things. We're not supposed to just shut that down.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And here's the thing, ladies, in the Bible, women worked. Like this whole fallacy of like they were out in the fields all day. And, the kids were all in the grandma daycare, you know what I mean, in the farmhouse. Like moms have worked for millennia. And so I don't, like on an intellectual level, I agree with both of you. Like God didn't make us the way we are to just squash that. I mean, our God is greater than that. However, I have mom guilt.
I think mom guilt begins upon conception. I mean, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I can't have a sip of wine. Oh my God, am I eating the right thing? Oh my God, I shouldn't be lifting something. Oh my God, right? And then it goes, and then you've got, the bait, and then it goes to, you've got the little bit. There's just, I think mom guilt is probably something that we will always have forever. And it's just a spectrum probably. And it's what do you choose to give yourself permission to do? And what do you give yourself, what are you going to accept as the need to feel guilty about something, or feel like you have to do something.
The more purposeful you are in your choices, when you're actively evaluating, discerning, praying, talking to people, and making decisions about how to move your life forward, the less guilt you have because you're doing it, you're making the choice and you're making it purposefully. Yes, you still probably have a little bit of that there. And I think I've had that perspective because I'm older than you guys. I'm farther along in the moment where Bill and I got purposeful about doing things. So I have a lot less guilt. I think it's when we're just kind of moving forward and life is going fast and we're not really being purposeful in our choices, then we feel guilty about the things we're not doing.
Yeah. And Trix, I love what you said about
who you are.
I love what you said, Trix, about modeling. You're modeling what you want your kids to see and become. You're living that by example. Yeah, I like that.
And I think, Laurel, like some of the guilt is not necessarily something that like I would put on myself. Like there's so much like judgment of unconventional marriages or unconventional, like, right, like when like that, especially I'm an immigrant, so I come from a different like line of people who like stay home and cook and clean, which is wonderful. It's just my ambitions were different than that. So I think sometimes like some of the guilt is just others putting that on us.
Yeah. I remember being at when Andrew was first born, and I was at this little mom staying at somebody's house. And I remember, I had a nanny, and the shaming that went on, I still remember to this day. I drove home. I had to leave
Really?
there. I just had to leave, and I drove home, and I was sobbing, just utterly sobbing. And I would say no one else did I raised my kids, right? Sean and I raised my kids.
Is this where Zoe's mom comes up?
I was just going to say that.
So Zoe's mom, yeah. So just the funny little thing about Zoe's mom, which that could be your nickname, Via, is Zoe's mom. So
Zoe's mom.
Via
That's kind of
has
my
been so unplugged from the mom channel
until recently.
That there was this little card that they wrote to all the moms, and they did not know Via's name, so they just put Zoe's mom. I mean, it was the most pitiful little thing that we had ever seen. Anyway,
I think I cried on that one.
We had the same version in our household because Bill was the stay-at-home dad, but they didn't know either of our names. He was Barefoot Guy because he was the only man in carpool line and he never wore shoes, and I was Barefoot Guy's wife.
That's even better. Hilarious. They all know Ben. They all know my husband.
So I want to talk for a second about what kind of a husband it takes to put up with to handle this situation. And then also I want to get into success. Situation. I want to get into the business side, right? The business side of the Amigas. So when it comes to, how do your husbands, and I mean, we've got Bill Grossman is on, he's in chat, but what would you say the role of your husbands has played in your success, and have they supported you in what you're doing? Have they tried to sort of clip you a little bit? Have they, what's that dynamic like?
I mean, I could go first. So I feel like John has been super supportive. Actually, the reason the number one thing that attracted me to John was how kind and how thoughtful he was of others. And I always knew he's also very good looking, but that's also great. He always knew I was going to be a career woman. Like, I wasn't shy about it on the front end, but that didn't mean that like once we got into it and I was a career woman and the primary breadwinner and all of this, that like things weren't wonky. And I think you work through it. I remember, I think we were probably 5 years into our marriage and it got super wonky, just trying to each find our own identity. I say that if you love each other, you work through it until you find both of your identities. And he found his identity and I continued my identity. And I think it's really important that if you have enough in common with each other, you just keep going. I remember it was those weird times when you're starting to think about divorce, and it was only 5 years in and we were young. And I think if there's any way to keep it going, like there's a lot of fruit and benefit. Like we wouldn't be who we are if we hadn't kept going. The rewards, I would say, is we now both have identities that we're really proud of. And because we both work outside the home, we've been able to fast track our investing. So when we talk about goals and success, I can talk more about that, but there's benefits to all of this. And I would say that just because you weren't a career woman to begin with doesn't mean you can't be one now, as long as you work towards that together, have that conversation.
That's me. I graduated college and all I wanted to do is get married and have a family. I went to William and Mary, one of the top schools in the country, and I would walk around proudly and tell everyone I didn't want a career, I just wanted a job.
And you ended up being the one that, with the badass career. That's great.
Right. And then becoming self-employed at the age of 56 for the very first time. So I had sort of the flip side. I didn't know what I wanted until I grew up and got wise. What does it take? it takes sharing values and being making sure your goals are the same. So Bill worked for the first years of our marriage. He has his MBA. He worked for the chairman of the board and the president of a bank. He, when he left his job, they hired 2 people to replace him. He had a great career. I didn't. I was in the mortgage business as a loan processor. And we finally, when we came together and decided to do what was right for our family, regardless of what society said and our parents and our friends said, we both felt a sense of relief. And that was for me to go back to work full time and for him to stay at home with our kids. And that was 29 years ago. It takes a man with that to be with someone like me. I won't speak for the other girls. It takes someone with no ego, because the immediate conclusion that people drew was he was fired, he couldn't skip, but couldn't keep a job. Our own families, even both of our parents, just could not understand for the longest time why we would do this. I think they get it now, but it takes that, and you have to be in sync about whose career is primary, because otherwise you're at battle all the time. It's like when you have your first kid and you have to talk about before you go to bed who's going to get up in the middle of the night with the baby, because otherwise you'll fight about it. It's the same thing about career. Even if you're both working, one is like, okay, who's going to get the call from the school?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting dynamic that, and this is going to segue into our next section, which is talking about your success and that kind of journey. But it's interesting to hear men say, I don't want my wife to have to work, or women that say, my husband makes enough money that I don't have to work. And I think I can speak for all of us that working isn't about the money. I mean, don't get me wrong, we make money, but it's not about earning money in order to put a roof and to support the family financially. It's about who we become. It's about who you become. Would you agree?
100%.
So, okay. So couple questions. How do you, and this question has evolved over the years, because I know we've known each other for so long, but how do you currently define success?
I'd say success is using my God-given talents to fulfill my God-given mission here. As I've gotten older, legacy and vocation have become the important part of my life.
That's good.
I would say,
sorry.
or Trixie, one of us. I would say right now, like the way I'm defining success, my kids are getting into their teenage years. So they're in year-round school. So success for me is when they come home from school, I'm home. When they have time off from school, I am with them. And I know we talked about it not being about the money, but I am, in money making years. I think your 30s and 40s are really important. And I've put in a lot of career capital in my 20s and early 30s, and now I have goals, and those goals include making money. And the best way I found to ensure that those goals are met is to meet my own people's goals. So I wake up every day and I'm obsessed and just focused on how can I help all the people that are in my care at work hit their goals so I can continue to hit my goals. And I think it's kind of, it's a balance, professional and personal. Like both of those are really important to me right now.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. So, I mean, there's success, first of all, in a lot of aspects of our life, right? Spiritual, physical, personal, financial, career, just to be clear. But I think what you're talking about, it seems, is more career. And I think that how I would answer that, Laurel, is that Trixie, you just said something interesting. You go, well, your 30s and 40s are your wealth building years. Not for all women, not for me. You see, in my 30s, I made a lot of money and I spent a lot of money. I was kind of in mom zone. it was a great decade, right? Actually, my most of my 40s were great because I spent a lot of money. And I just didn't get the memo till a little bit later in life. And I really didn't start my wealth building journey till about 48 years old. I'm 51 now. And so wealth building has got to be part of that answer. Now I'm in a phase of my life where the income is really about how can we live and, have some fun, go out to eat, go on vacation, and basically buy assets. And so I'm actually really fired up and pumped up about it, and it's exciting to me. So it's not a negative thing, sort of a thing. But at 51, I've got a 20-year plan here to get enough passive income to pay our monthly. If I can build up enough passive income out of my real estate and business assets that I purchase, so that I don't have to work, and work becomes a little bit more optional, I can sort of cherry pick a little bit. That is massive career and wealth building success for me. We didn't get into like what's marriage success, what's success for my kids, because I think that the other thing I would add is that the other way I judge myself now, 100%, is how my kids are. That's my success. So, are my kids happy? Are they functional? Are they purposeful? Are they, pursuing what they're wired to do, all the things, as moms and dads that we want for our kids, right? But I do want to say that I think I'm not the only woman who started on my career track later. I mean, I got into corporate leadership and corporate management for the first time in my life at age 48. That's weird. That's weird.
Well, not
John,
weird to me. I'm earning more money than I've ever dreamed I could earn starting 3 years ago, and I'm 56. So I get that. And I think the part about kids, that's part of legacy. What are you leaving your kids is part of your legacy.
Yeah.
John Heath, who's one of our beloved CDREs in North Carolina, he said his wife asked him many years ago, "Do you have a problem with me earning more than you?" And his answer was, my prayers have been answered. We share in everything. I love that.
Oh, I love that.
I love that. It's been a great joy for me to be able to also help Sean. I mean, Sean's worked that guy's got a work ethic that is insane. And he's from a very early age, and he had to support his mom. I mean, he's just, it started out for me being able to help financially so that he doesn't have to carry the full load. It started out like that, and then it just kind of, went from there. And I'm glad that we've been able to share in that, and that we've been able to, neither one of us, obviously I work in the divorce business, and so I can't help the lens that I look through. And that is that neither one of us is here because we have to be. We're here because we want to be. And so when you have financial independence, when both spouses have financial independence, you realize that making that choice to walk through that door, and stay through all of life's ups and downs, that you're doing it because you want to do it, not because you have to do it. It's a very different dynamic in a marriage. So what drives you?
Well, I think I just shared what drives me right now.
Okay.
I'm on an incredibly exciting and aggressive wealth building journey, which, Hip Kitty, I think of as a legacy. I mean, I think about a lot, like, when am I leaving my kids? I don't want them to have to, financially have me as a burden as I get older. And so to me, I think what really drives that is that legacy conversation, and my kids drive me. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say that the thing that probably drives me the most, I mean, I want to, since we're just being transparent, it makes me sound better to say like my kids and my legacy. If we're really being honest, what drives me every day and stays with me till my head hits the pillow, so to speak, is I'm in a constant life pursuit to achieve my potential. It's my potential, like to hit my full potential probably drives me the most.
I would really, God, you're gonna make me cry. Seriously.
Oh no.
Seriously, because you guys lived this with me 3 years ago or whatever, when I decided to replace myself and become, my own boss, so to speak. And now I just lost what I was gonna say. Senior moment.
Well, potential. Was it potential?
Yes, and being the best that you can be, and also being the oldest one, knowing that time is finite. And all of a sudden, when I mean, Via, you just turned 50 last year, like turning 50 for me and going through a terrible surgery and all of that changed my life. And all of a sudden I was like, why am I here on earth? What am I meant to do on this planet? What is my mission in life? And that's where Ops Boss coaching came from. And that's where, holy cow, stepping out to become self-employed at the age of 56 for the first time, am I freaking crazy? No, I'm not, because I might be gone tomorrow. That's what drives me. I have a mission to help people, and it's all about that. Sorry, I get passionate. You really sparked that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, and I think it all started, like, I think we all start at different points, everyone on this call. For me, I'm first generation breaking out of poverty. So that drove me for a long time. Just making money drove me for a long time. And it's probably why I became my own business owner, right? And then I would say, 6 years ago, I had a really devastating, like, professional setback, right? And these ladies were all part of, they didn't let me, like, wallow in that long term. And
We did for a little bit. You wallowed for a little bit. We let you.
Very
oh my
like,
God, 3
okay,
weeks,
you're done.
a little bit. And then
I drug you up to Bellingham is what I did.
That's right. That's right. So with all, like, but even with that professional, loss, if you will, you look up and here you are, like, 6 years later, and it's no longer about, breaking out of something or achieving something. It's what Via and Christy just said. And for me, I've got a really, there was a thing I read on ambition and goals, right? And I had ambitions for a really long time. And now I've turned those ambitions into goals. I'm very clear. I want to buy, $2 million worth of real estate every year so I can have 10 million by age 40. And it doesn't matter what that number is. But for me, it's like, okay, now I've got to get serious about this. I've got to hold it accountable. So that's what drives me, just turning my ambitions, my potentials into actual goals that I'm accountable to.
Yurdi Brandon
that's
said
awesome.
that. That was so good.
So I want to move on. I want to talk just a little bit about our tribe, and what it's meant. And then I want to wrap up with our self-care plan. What is your self-care plan? So, what would you say? I got actually a couple questions because I asked for questions. I got a couple questions. How do you stay? This was a question asked to us. How do you stay supportive versus competitive?
It's interesting because the four of us all started out pretty much in the same roles, not the same roles, but we either owned or were leading real estate teams. We were all doing the same thing, and now we all four do different things. So that competitive thing has changed over time.
I think you can be competitive and also cheer, like, each other on. I think early on we were doing, like, listing contests and stuff like that, and I don't remember ever being like, oh my God, oh dang, Via got more listings than me. I don't remember thinking that. I remember being inspired by it, but I don't remember thinking, man, that sucks, Via got more than me. Like, I always have been inspired by people who do more. So it wasn't like, there are times where I'm like, oh, 9 years ago, my financial situation wasn't you guys' financial situations. You guys were ahead of me. So there were times where I was like, oh, I wish I could be better. But even then I was like, you choose to take the high road, I think.
I think other people's successes create new possibilities for me. When I saw you succeed, it widened my vision.
True.
Well, yeah. And I'm thinking, I remember Trixie, like, so we were all, it's funny, actually, 3 of us were entrepreneurs, and then Hip Kitty, you joined us in entrepreneur world. And it's how I define myself. And I think Trixie, and it's funny because I'm the one that pulled you into Bellingham, to meet with Ben. I remember sitting with Ben Kinney, who you're both of our business partners now. I remember sitting at a lunch with him, and I would share with him that you were available on the job market. And he was like, get her on the phone right now. I want her here. And that's how that whole thing started. And I think watching you as kind of an entrepreneur was part of the catalyst for me thinking, you know, that's an okay thing to do. I don't have to define myself as an entrepreneur. I can actually get everything I want and possibly more and possibly be happier. So I don't think we ever felt competitive. But what struck me, Laurel, when you asked that question, the first thing that popped into my head is that I have been so transparent with you guys for so long, like almost a decade. Like I long ago shed the need to look good and be right with you all, like so long ago. And I'm so grateful that I have a couple of tribes that I feel that way. I just have, you know, everybody needs groups of friends where they just don't have that anymore, where they can just be real and share, like, I'm really jealous. Like, I'm really jealous that, you know, this or that or this or that. And when you talk about it, they're just, I wouldn't say we're competitive. Sorry, that was a door slamming. I wouldn't say we were competitive. We're just, it's more aspirational.
Yeah. And I would say you don't show up with this group of friends. I mean, it kind of helps. Yeah. You don't show up with a group. I wouldn't show up with 3 of you being a loser. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not kind of, you know,
Well, you're not a loser. So there's,
you know,
Well, I mean, Laurel, it goes back to how, like, we weren't on a journey to find friends, right? Like, we weren't on that journey. It goes back to the very beginning. We were on a journey to get better ourselves, right? And at that time, it was professional growth, right? And that professional growth brought us together as friends. And so I think we were already on a growth journey to where the petty stuff just doesn't have as much of a place, right? And I often think, you know, like, be in a room of ladies who would, you know, say your name when there's an opportunity. And I think that's what we've really strived for, is to create that kind of environment.
yeah, I mean, it's not like we piss each other off all the time. I mean, that's just part of it. Like, we're like 4 sisters, but I mean, that's okay. It's not, you know, that's
Yeah.
Even planning this podcast.
even planning
Yeah.
this podcast. Yeah. I mean, but you know, we've had,
Laurel almost disowned me planning this podcast.
I did, but it's
It's
all
all
good.
good. It's
I would say
fine.
we have a healthy conflict. We do have conflict. We kind of get into it. But
We're actually
then
really good at conflict, though.
we actually are good at it. We address it, we talk it out, and we extinguish it. So it's very, yeah, this isn't, we don't sugarcoat stuff, you know, all that. Don't ask these girls anything that you don't want to know the real answer to. And then lastly, what is your self-care plan? And when do you sleep? We've got a minute, so make it round robin.
I don't have a great self-care plan, I would say, but I do see, you know what I do? I pick one thing that I want to get better at, right? So, like, I was having a lot of, like, neck and back pain, a lot of migraines. So I picked going to the chiropractor 3 times a week, and I picked that. And once I feel better with that, I'll pick something else that I want to solve in my life.
Mhm.
And it sounds like health, but self-care is health. And I know I was actually inspired to do that by Via. And then I sleep 12 to 7, which is not healthy. I'm scaling that back. I'd like it to be more like 10 to 6. So that's my answer.
I take a bath every night. I take a bubble bath with candles. Sometimes I listen to music. Sometimes I listen to podcasts. Sometimes I listen to Audible, but I don't ever force myself to listen. It can be Joe Rogan. It doesn't have to be anything. That's just my time. Sometimes it's just music, like I said. And I think we all probably could use I think we all probably need to get better there.
Yeah, I'm like the person who goes in sprint mode and then does self-care, sprint self-care. My self-care is travel. It's Paris, and obviously not going
We're all good at travel.
COVID, so I need a better self-care plan. But it's travel.
Yeah. Good. Ladies, we're out of time. That went quickly. So thank you for joining us. And thank all of you for tuning in. Hopefully, it's been therapeutic for us. So hopefully you all, somebody got a few nuggets out there. So anyway, listen, you don't have to do it all. That's the bottom line. We don't do it all. And success is defined by everyone in a different way. And I will tell you one thing we all share in common. Society does not define our standards. Society doesn't define success for us. We have all invented our own definition of that and hold each other accountable to it. And, and it's all just one big journey. Nobody's perfect. So anyway, thank you. This This is fun. This is the highlight of my week. And we will
too.
see you all around.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks, Laurel.